I was frantically shoving clothes into my suitcase at 4:30 in the morning, trying not to wake the 4 children sleeping in the next room. My name is Glenda, 32, and I never signed up for this. My family had taken off on a $3,000 vacation, without me, then dumped their kids on my doorstep, assuming I would provide free childcare. Now I was making my escape, knowing that when they found out, all hell would break loose. They even called Child Protective Services when they discovered what I had done. Where are you watching from? Drop a like and subscribe if you have ever had to make a tough decision to stand up for yourself against family who took advantage of you. Growing up in suburban Seattle, I always knew my place in the family hierarchy. As the middle child between my older sister Audrey and younger brother Nate, I became the reliable one, the peacekeeper, the one who always made things work. My parents, Diana and Walter, were both teachers who preached fairness but practiced favoritism. Audrey was the academic star. Everything she accomplished was celebrated with parties and praise. Her report cards were displayed proudly on the refrigerator. Her college acceptance letters were framed. When she married Patrick and had twins Zoe and Zachary 7 years ago, my parents acted like they were the first grandchildren in history. Then there was Nate, the baby of the family. He could do no wrong. When he struggled in school, it was because the teachers didn't understand his learning style. When he wrecked his first car, my parents bought him another one. When he married Tiffany, and they had Mason and Lily, now 5 and 3. My parents rearranged their retirement plans to help with childcare and mortgage payments. And me, I was the invisible middle child. The time my science project won the state fair, my parents missed the ceremony because Nate had a cold. When I graduated college with honors, they attended Nate's baseball tournament instead, asking me to just take pictures. My accomplishments were always met with a distracted, "That is nice, honey," before conversation returned to my siblings. I learned early on that my role was to give, not receive. When our grandmother fell ill during my 13th summer, I was the one who gave up summer camp to help care for her, while my siblings continued with their activities. When our parents needed a loan to fix their roof, I was the one who postponed buying my first car to help them out. The money was never repaid. It was just expected. This pattern continued into adulthood. After college, I moved back home temporarily to save money. Somehow, that turned into 5 years of helping pay the mortgage while my siblings received down payment gifts for their own homes. I became the default babysitter, the emergency contact, the one who could always be counted on to rearrange my schedule when someone needed something. The irony was that professionally, I was thriving. Through hard work and determination, I had risen to become the marketing director at a growing tech startup. My colleagues respected me. My bosses valued me. I finally saved enough for my own apartment 2 years ago, a small but modern 1-bedroom that became my sanctuary. My family seemed puzzled by this move. "Why waste money on rent when you have a perfectly good room at home?" my mother asked, not understanding that at 30 I desperately needed my own space. What she really meant was they were losing their convenient live-in helper. The day I moved out, my father looked around my empty childhood bedroom and sighed. "Well, I guess we can still count on you for Sunday dinners and babysitting, right? Not, 'we will miss you,' or 'congratulations on this new chapter.'" Just confirming that my departure wouldn't inconvenience them too much. My sister Audrey lived in a sprawling 4-bedroom house in an exclusive neighborhood. Her husband Patrick worked in finance, and they enjoyed all the trappings of upper-middle-class success. The twins attended private school and took expensive lessons in everything from piano to horseback riding. Yet whenever they needed a babysitter, they expected me to do it for free because family helps family. Nate and Tiffany struggled more financially living in a modest townhouse. Nate worked inconsistently as a contractor while Tiffany stayed home with the kids. They were always short on money, but somehow found funds for gaming systems and weekend trips. Whenever they faced a financial emergency, which was monthly, I received the call. "Just until payday, Glenda. You know we are good for it." They never were. My parents had retired comfortably but constantly complained about money. This didn't stop them from taking cruises or renovating their kitchen. When I mentioned my student loans, they would change the subject. When I brought up the money they had borrowed over the years, they acted offended that I would keep track of such things between family. I developed people-pleasing tendencies that followed me everywhere. At work, I took on extra projects. In friendships, I was always the supportive one. In dating, I attracted men who wanted a caretaker more than a partner. It was exhausting, but the thought of disappointing people terrified me. What if they stopped loving me? What if they went away? My apartment became the only place I could truly be myself. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, with bright colors and art collected from local markets. I kept plants that thrived under my care. I established routines that nourished me. But even this sanctuary was regularly invaded by family who dropped by unannounced, asking favors, or simply taking over my space without consideration. I was trapped in a cycle that I couldn't see a way out of. I was the reliable Glenda, the dependable daughter and sister, the one who never said no, the one who made everything work. It was my identity, my prison, and my life. Until things finally went too far. The pattern of my family taking advantage of me was so deeply established that it had become our normal. Every holiday, I was expected to host and cook for everyone. My apartment might have been small, but that didn't stop my family from volunteering it as the gathering place. "Your place is so much cleaner," my mother would say, ignoring the fact that my place was cleaner because I lived alone and spent hours preparing for their visits. Thanksgiving was always my responsibility. I would spend weeks planning the menu days, shopping and preparing, and hundreds of dollars on food and decorations. My family would arrive, compliment the meal, and leave me with the cleanup. When I suggested rotating hosting duties one year, Audrey laughed and said, "But nobody does it like you, Glenda." Translation: nobody else wanted to do the work. Babysitting requests came constantly and without consideration for my schedule. "Can you watch the twins tonight? Patrick surprised me with concert tickets." This with 2 hours' notice on a work night. "We need you to take Mason and Lily this weekend. Tiffany and I need couple time." This when I had planned my first date in months. When I occasionally said I couldn't do it, the guilt trips began. "The kids will be so disappointed. We never get to do anything nice for ourselves. I guess your Netflix is more important than your family." They knew exactly which buttons to push to make me cave. Money was another constant issue. Nate had borrowed over $7,000 from me in the past 3 years alone. Small amounts at first for groceries or to cover the electric bill, but eventually larger sums for car repairs or rent. I kept track in a small notebook I hid in my dresser, too embarrassed to confront him, but too financially strained to ignore it. Audrey borrowed less money, but more valuable things. My clothes, my jewelry, even my car. She returned items damaged, empty, or sometimes not at all. When I mentioned a missing bracelet once, she said, "Oh, that old thing, I thought you would not even notice it was gone. You should be happy it is getting some use." My parents positioned themselves as the coordinators of this taking operation. "Audrey needs to borrow your car this weekend." Nate and Tiffany could really use help with their utility bill. They never framed these as requests, but as established facts. My participation was assumed. 6 months ago, I finally started seeing a therapist. Dr. Sharma was a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes who asked questions no one had ever asked me before. "What do you want, Glenda? What would happen if you said no? Who takes care of you while you are taking care of everyone else?" Our sessions became the highlight of my week, a place where I could speak freely about the resentment building inside me. Dr. Sharma introduced me to concepts like boundaries and people-pleasing. She gave me books about family dynamics and codependency. Slowly, I began to see my situation more clearly. I tried tentatively to establish some boundaries. I created a shared calendar for babysitting requests asking for at least 3 days' notice. My family ignored it completely. I asked Nate about a repayment plan for the money he owed. He got angry and didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. I suggested someone else host Thanksgiving. My mother cried and said I was tearing the family apart. During a family dinner at my parents' house, I tried to discuss how overwhelmed I felt. I am happy to help out, but I need some reciprocity, I explained carefully. I need to feel like my time and resources are respected. The reaction was immediate and hostile. Audrey rolled her eyes dramatically. Here we go again with Glenda's complaints. Some of us have children to raise. We do not have the luxury of being selfish. Nate chimed in. Must be nice to only have to worry about yourself. Try having real responsibilities sometime. My mother reached across the table to pat my hand condescendingly. Honey, this is what family does. We all have our roles. Yours is to be the helper. You are so good at it. My father simply continued eating, avoiding the conversation entirely. I left that dinner feeling more alone than ever. The message was clear, my feelings didn't matter. My boundaries weren't valid. My role was fixed and unchangeable. The only person who truly understood was my best friend, Taylor. We had met in college and stayed close, despite her moving to Portland after graduation. During our weekly phone calls, I would vent about the latest family imposition. Taylor never minimized my feelings or defended my family's behavior. They are taking advantage of you, she would say plainly. You know that, right? This isn't normal or healthy. When I shared what Dr. Sharma had suggested about setting boundaries, Taylor cheered me on. When those boundaries were trampled, she offered sympathy without suggesting I give up. It is a process, she reminded me. They have had 32 years to learn they can treat you this way. It will not change overnight. At work, things were looking up. I received a promotion to senior marketing director, which came with more responsibility and a welcome salary increase. But it also meant longer hours and higher stakes projects. I found myself working evenings and weekends to keep up. The stress was mounting, and I desperately needed a break. One night, scrolling through vacation rentals on my laptop, I had an idea. Maybe a family vacation was what we all needed. Time away from the usual dynamics. A chance to relax and reconnect. I could even use some of my new salary to help make it happen. Despite everything, I still longed for a healthy relationship with my family. Still hoped we could change. Little did I know that this well-intentioned idea would lead to one of the most painful betrayals yet, and finally push me to my breaking point. It started as a casual suggestion during one of our Sunday family dinners. What if we all took a trip to Florida this summer? I offered during dessert. The beach would be nice, and there are activities for the kids. I have been researching some affordable rental houses that could fit all of us. The reaction seemed positive. Audrey's twins immediately started talking about Disney World. Nate mentioned he hadn't had a real vacation in years. My parents exchanged interested looks. That sounds lovely, dear, my mother said. What a thoughtful idea. Energized by their enthusiasm, I spent the next week researching options. I created a detailed document with links to vacation rentals, nearby attractions, and estimated costs. I set up a shared folder online and invited everyone to contribute ideas. I even started putting aside money each paycheck to help cover expenses for Nate's family, knowing their budget was tight. For a few weeks, there was a flurry of activity. Comments appeared in the shared document. Links to attractions were added. My mother called to discuss meal planning for the trip. It felt collaborative and positive in a way family projects rarely did. Then gradually, things went quiet. My messages in the family group chat about booking deadlines went unanswered. When I brought up the vacation during our next family dinner, everyone seemed suddenly vague. Oh, we still have plenty of time to figure that out, Audrey said dismissively. Let's talk about it later, my father suggested. Pass the potatoes, please. I felt a familiar sinking feeling, but pushed it aside. They were probably just busy. We would pick up the planning again soon. A few days later, I stopped by Audrey's house to drop off a birthday gift for one of the twins. As I approached the front door, I overheard her on the phone. "Yes, we are finalizing the tickets tomorrow," she was saying excitedly. "The resort looks amazing online. All-inclusive means we won't have to worry about a thing." My hand froze mid-knock. What tickets? What resort? I hadn't seen any all-inclusive options in our shared planning document. When Audrey answered the door, I tried to sound casual. "Hey, I heard you talking about vacation plans. Did you find a good deal on one of the options I shared?" A flash of something crossed her face. Guilt. Annoyance. It was gone quickly. "Oh, that was nothing. Just exploring options. We haven't decided anything yet." But the seed of suspicion was planted. Over the next few days, I noticed more clues. My mother mentioned needing to shop for new swimsuits for the trip, then quickly changed the subject when she saw my expression. Nate asked to borrow my beach umbrella, but became evasive when I asked what for. Something was definitely going on. The truth came out the following Sunday. I arrived at my parents' house for dinner with a printed copy of my vacation research, determined to get the planning back on track. As I walked in, I noticed an unusual energy in the room. Everyone seemed excited but slightly uncomfortable. During dinner, my father cleared his throat. "We have some exciting news," he announced. "We have finally booked that family vacation we have been talking about." My heart lifted momentarily. They had moved forward with one of my suggestions after all. "We found this amazing all-inclusive resort in Cancun," my mother continued enthusiastically. $3,000 total for a 5-day package. We got the last 8-person package available. I froze fork halfway to my mouth. 8-person package. There were 9 of us, including me. 8-person, I asked quietly. An awkward silence fell over the table. My parents exchanged glances. Audrey suddenly became very interested in cutting her child's food. Nate stared at his plate. "Well," my mother finally said, "it is 2 rooms with 4 people each. Patrick and Audrey with the twins in one, and Nate and Tiffany with their kids in the other. Your father and I will share with them." "And me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. More uncomfortable silence. "We thought you would be too busy with work, honey," my mother offered weakly. "With your new promotion and everything." "The package only accommodated 8 people, Audrey added quickly. "It was the best value. And we assumed you wouldn't want to spend that much anyway," Nate said, not meeting my eyes. I sat in stunned silence as they continued to explain their excuses overlapping. They had used my initial vacation suggestion, but completely excluded me from the actual planning. They had taken my research and ideas and moved forward without me. The betrayal stung like a physical pain. I somehow made it through the rest of dinner, mechanically eating food I couldn't taste, nodding at conversations I couldn't focus on. As everyone was leaving, my mother pulled me aside. "Glenda, can you stay a moment? Help me with the dishes." Once we were alone in the kitchen, I expected an apology, some acknowledgement of how hurtful their actions had been. Instead, I got another shock. "Honey, we were actually hoping you might house sit while we are gone," she said, handing me a dish to dry. "Water the plants bring in the mail, you know?" "House sit," I repeated numbly. "And maybe look after the pets, too," she continued brightly. "Audrey's cat and Nate's dog. We thought it would be easier to have them all in one place rather than board them." The realization hit me like a wave. They hadn't just excluded me from the vacation. They had cast me in the role of caretaker for what they left behind. "We really appreciate it, honey," my mother said, patting my arm. "You are always so reliable." I drove home in tears, calling Taylor as soon as I got to my apartment. She listened in growing outrage as I explained what had happened. "They are unbelievable," She fumed. They took your vacation idea, planned it without you, and then expected you to pet sit. Please tell me you said no. I admitted I hadn't actually given them an answer. I had been too shocked, too hurt to form the words. Glenda, Taylor said firmly, this is beyond taking advantage. This is cruel. You have to stand up for yourself this time. I knew she was right. This wasn't just about pet sitting. This was about years of being taken for granted, years of giving without receiving, years of being the reliable Glenda who would never say no. Something had to change. I just didn't realize how quickly that change would be forced upon me. The week before my family's vacation brought a strange shift in their behavior toward me. Suddenly, everyone was being unusually nice. Audrey dropped by my office with my favorite coffee drink, just because. Nate sent a text thanking me for being the best sister ever. My mother called daily just to check in. Even my father, who rarely reached out directly, sent an email with a funny cat video that made me think of you. The attention was disorienting after being so thoroughly excluded from their vacation plans. Dr. Sharma had a term for this love bombing. It is a manipulation tactic, she explained during our session. They sense you pulling away or potentially saying no, so they overwhelm you with affection to keep you compliant. 2 days before their scheduled departure, my mother called to invite me to a family dinner at their house. Just a little pre-vacation celebration, she said cheerfully. Everyone will be there. I should have been suspicious, but some naive part of me hoped they had reconsidered. Maybe they had found a way to include me after all. Maybe they had realized how hurtful their actions had been. I agreed to come. When I arrived, the dining room table was covered with papers instead of dishes. Travel documents, printed itineraries, and colorful brochures were spread across the surface. My family was gathered around, excited faces turned toward me as I entered. There she is, my father announced. Just the person we needed to see. Come sit, my mother urged, patting the chair at the head of the table. We have everything organized for you. Confused, I took the seat. Audrey immediately slid a folder toward me. These are the twins' summer reading assignments that need to be completed while we are gone. Zachary needs extra help with the comprehension questions. Before I could respond, Nate jumped in. Mason has soccer practice on Tuesday and Thursday at 4. Lily has dance on Wednesday at 5:30. Their gear is all labeled. My mother pulled out a sheet covered in her neat handwriting. Here is the medication schedule. Zoe needs her allergy medicine twice daily. Mason has asthma treatments every morning. Oh, and Lily still occasionally wets the bed, so you will need to have extra sheets ready. I looked around the table in growing disbelief. Wait, what are you talking about? I thought I was just watching the pets. A moment of awkward silence fell. My parents exchanged a look. Well, honey, my mother finally said, we thought it made more sense for you to watch the children too. The resort isn't as child-friendly as we originally thought. Not very good activities for kids their ages, my father added unconvincingly. And the child care center there is fully booked, Audrey said. We checked. Plus, it costs extra, Nate mumbled. I stared at them speechless. They hadn't just excluded me from the vacation. They had never intended to take the children either. This had been the plan all along. You want me to watch all 4 children for 5 days, I finally managed to say. We knew you would not mind, Audrey said with a dismissive wave. The kids love you so much. It is just for a few days, Tiffany added. We never get a break from parenting. You don't understand how hard it is since you don't have children. Patrick said, the implication clear that my time was less valuable as a result. We have already paid and can't get refunds, my father pointed out. The resort was strict about that. They continued talking over each other, outlining schedules, preferences, rules, and expectations. They spoke as if my agreement was already secured, as if my time and life were completely at their disposal. No one asked if I could take time off work. No one offered any compensation. No one even said, please. I sat in stunned silence as they quickly moved on to discussing what they would do at the resort, comparing notes on excursions and restaurants. My role in their vacation had been decided without my input or consent. As the dinner wrapped up, my mother handed me a thick stack of papers. Here is everything you need to know. Emergency contacts, schedules, the kids' favorite foods, everything. They will all sleep at your place, of course. More space than Nate's and closer to the schools than our house. They hugged me goodbye at the door, thanking me profusely for helping out, as if I had enthusiastically volunteered rather than been ambushed. I tried several times to speak up, to object, to ask questions about work arrangements, but was talked over each time. "We will text when we land," my mother called as they all walked to their cars. "The kids will be dropped off at 7 a.m. sharp on Friday." I drove home in a daze, then immediately tried calling each family member. All went to voicemail. I sent urgent texts asking to discuss the childcare situation. The few responses I received were brief and dismissive. "Too busy packing. Talk tomorrow." "Kids already excited to stay with Aunt Glenda. Don't disappoint them." "You will figure it out. You always do." That night, I had an emergency phone session with Dr. Sharma. "They cannot actually force you to do this," she reminded me gently. "You have the right to say no." "But how?" I asked desperately. "They won't even talk to me about it, and they will be dropping off the kids in less than 48 hours. "This is the moment to break the pattern," she said. "If you accept this, you are telling them that your boundaries mean nothing, that your time, your work, your life are less important than theirs." I knew she was right, but the thought of refusing terrified me. What would happen to the kids? Would my family ever forgive me? Would this break beyond repair the relationships I had spent my life trying to maintain? That night, I called Taylor and explained the situation. "This is insane," she said flatly. "They cannot seriously expect you to take a week off work with no notice to provide free childcare for 4 kids. That would cost thousands of dollars professionally." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "If I say no now, they will just show up with the kids anyway. They know I won't turn the children away." There was a long pause on the line. "What if you weren't there?" Taylor finally asked. "What do you mean? What if when they came to drop off the kids you simply weren't home?" The idea was simultaneously terrifying and liberating. For the first time, I began to see a way out that didn't involve direct confrontation, something I knew I wasn't ready for yet. "But where would I go? What about the kids?" "I have an idea," Taylor said. "But you will need to be brave. Braver than you have ever been with your family." As she outlined her plan, I felt a mixture of fear and determination growing inside me. This would change everything. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what needed to happen. The morning of my family's departure arrived with perfect weather for travel. By 6 a.m., my doorbell was ringing repeatedly earlier than the agreed-upon time. When I opened the door, chaos poured in. All 4 children, still in pajamas and looking sleepy, tumbled into my apartment, followed by my family members carrying luggage backpacks, stuffed animals, and various supplies. "We are running a bit early," my mother explained breathlessly. "Wanted to beat the airport traffic." They moved through my small apartment like a whirlwind, depositing children and belongings in every available space. Audrey walked straight to my bedroom and placed 2 small suitcases on my bed. "The twins will sleep in here with you," she said, not a question, but a statement. "Mason and Lily can have the couch pull-out." Meanwhile, Nate was already programming my television. "Mason needs his shows in the morning or he gets cranky. I set up the parental controls so they can only watch approved channels." My mother pulled me into the kitchen, opening my refrigerator and frowning at its contents. "You will need to go grocery shopping today. I made a list of what each child will and won't eat. Zoe is going through a phase where she only eats white foods. Zachary is allergic to strawberries. Mason won't eat anything green. Lily needs her milk warmed exactly 45 seconds in the microwave. Patrick was setting up some kind of baby monitor on my bookshelf. This connects to our phones so we can check in on the kids. The camera covers most of the living room. Tiffany handed me a stuffed dinosaur. Mason cannot sleep without Rex. If he gets lost, there will be a complete meltdown. We lost him once and had to drive back 2 hours to a restaurant to find him. I tried repeatedly to interject to ask questions to express my concerns about work and the lack of preparation, but was talked over each time. When I finally raised my voice to say, I never agreed to this, my father checked his watch and announced, we really need to get going if we're going to make our flight. My mother pressed a piece of paper into my hand. Emergency numbers are on here. Pediatrician, dentist, our hotel information. Oh, and Nate's dog walker canceled last minute, so you will need to take Baxter out 3 times a day. Audrey's cat Sophie needs her special food twice daily. But I have to work, I finally managed to say. I can't just take a week off with no notice. My family exchanged glances. You can bring them to the office, right? Audrey suggested. Or work from home. Or call in sick, Nate added. Family emergency. Before I could formulate a response, they were moving toward the door, calling final instructions over their shoulders. Bedtime is 8 for the little ones, 9 for the twins. No sugar after dinner or they won't sleep. Zachary has a science project due Monday. Mason needs his inhaler before any physical activity. And then, with quick hugs for the children and casual waves to me, they were gone. My mother pressed the house keys into my palm with a whispered, emergency numbers are on the fridge. Thanks, honey. You're a lifesaver. I stood in the doorway, watching their cars pull away, completely overwhelmed by what had just happened. Behind me, Lily started to cry, missing her parents already. Mason was demanding breakfast. The twins were arguing over who would get which side of my bed. I spent that day in a fog trying to manage 4 children with different needs, schedules, and personalities while making desperate phone calls that went straight to voicemail. I texted my family repeatedly explaining that I had never agreed to this arrangement and couldn't possibly manage it with my work obligations. When they finally responded hours later, it was with a beach selfie. Checked-in resort is amazing, kids need dinner by 6. Thanks, sis. That evening, after serving 4 different meals to satisfy each child's preferences, supervising baths, finding missing stuffed animals, reading bedtime stories, and cleaning up what looked like a toy store explosion in my living room, I finally had a moment to think. I called Taylor, whispering from my bathroom so as not to wake the children. They actually did it, I said, my voice shaking. They just left them all here and took off. Are you okay? Taylor asked, concern evident in her voice. No, I admitted. I'm not. I can't do this, Taylor. I have a major presentation on Monday that I'm not prepared for. I can't take these kids to the office. I can't work from home with 4 children under 8. I can't do this. Then we stick to the plan, Taylor said firmly. I'll be there at 4:30 tomorrow morning. I barely slept that night, squished between the twins who had somehow taken over most of my queen-sized bed. My mind raced with anxiety, guilt, and something else I wasn't used to feeling when it came to my family anger. Pure, justified anger. They had crossed a line this time, used me in a way that went beyond inconsiderate into something truly selfish. They knew I wouldn't abandon their children, and they had weaponized my love for their kids to manipulate me. By 4 a.m., I was already awake and quietly packing a small suitcase. I wrote out a detailed note and left it on the kitchen counter where it would be easy to find. At 4:30 exactly, my phone buzzed with a text from Taylor. I'm outside. I opened the door to find not just Taylor, but also my colleague Amanda, both looking determined and supportive. You're doing the right thing, Amanda whispered, giving me a quick hug. Michael has the guest rooms already. With their help, we quietly gathered the still sleeping children, wrapping them in blankets and carrying them to Taylor's SUV. Mason clutched his dinosaur, even in sleep. Lily snuggled against my shoulder, not waking, as I buckled her into a booster seat. The twins stirred slightly, but settled again once the car started moving. We drove across town as the sun began to rise, heading to Amanda's large family home, where her husband Michael and teenage daughters waited to help. The children would be safe, comfortable, and well cared for, not by someone who had been coerced and cornered, but by people who had willingly and knowingly offered to help. As we pulled into Amanda's driveway, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and liberation. I was breaking the pattern that had defined my entire life. I was saying no to being taken advantage of, even if it meant facing the fury of my family when they discovered what I had done. I didn't know then just how explosive their reaction would be. I didn't know they would call the police, report me for child abandonment, and even contact Child Protective Services. I didn't know this would be the beginning of the hardest and most important stand I had ever taken. All I knew was that at that moment, carrying sleeping Lily into Amanda's warm, welcoming home, as the morning light grew stronger, I was finally choosing myself. And despite the fear, despite the uncertainty of what would come next, that felt like the first step toward freedom. The children woke up confused, but quickly adapted to their new surroundings. Amanda's house was spacious and welcoming, with a big backyard and plenty of toys thanks to her 3 teenagers who immediately took the little ones under their wings. Amanda's 16-year-old daughters, Jasmine and Jordan, were experienced babysitters who knew exactly how to distract and engage the children. "Pancakes are ready," Amanda called cheerfully, setting out plates shaped like animals. "Who wants blueberry faces on theirs?" As the children ate breakfast, I placed a call to my boss explaining the situation. I had expected disappointment or frustration, but instead received unexpected support. "Family emergency leave exists for reasons like this," she said firmly. "Take the days you need to sort this out. The presentation can be rescheduled." Around noon, my phone began to explode with notifications. My family had landed, checked their phones, and discovered my messages explaining I had never agreed to childcare and would not be providing it. The calls came first, dozens of them, each voicemail more frantic and angry than the last. "What do you mean you're not watching the kids? Where are they? Call me back immediately!" Audrey's voice shook with rage. "This isn't funny, Glenda. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've gone too far." My father, always the peacekeeper, sounded genuinely alarmed. "I cannot believe you would abandon your responsibility like this, after everything we've done for you." My mother's guilt tactics right on schedule. "The resort won't give refunds. We can't come back early." What were you thinking? Nate concerned primarily with the financial implications. I sent one text message to the family group chat. "The children are safe with a responsible adult family friend. I never agreed to provide childcare and was not able to take time off work with no notice." I left a detailed note with contact information. "The children are being well cared for and are perfectly fine." This only increased the flood of messages, accusations of betrayal, threats about never being forgiven, reminders of all they had ever done for me, assertions that I had endangered the children. Around 2 p.m., there was a knock at Amanda's door. Officer Martinez introduced himself politely but firmly. "We received a report of potential child abandonment," he explained. "I need to confirm the whereabouts and well-being of 4 minor children." My heart pounded as I invited him in. "The children are here, officer. They're playing in the backyard. I'm their aunt, and these are family friends who offered to help care for them." Officer Martinez observed the children who were happily playing a supervised game of tag with Jasmine and Jordan. He took notes as I explained the situation, showing him the text messages and emails documenting my attempts to decline the childcare arrangement before my family left. "So, you never agreed to watch these children?" he clarified. "No, sir. They were dropped off despite my objections, and I ensured they were brought to a safe environment with responsible adults when I realized I couldn't provide adequate care while working." After interviewing Amanda and the children themselves, who confirmed they were happy and well treated, Officer Martinez seemed satisfied. "This doesn't appear to be abandonment," he concluded. "The children are safe, and being properly cared for by responsible adults. You might want to have a serious conversation with your family about childcare arrangements in the future, though. I thought the worst was over until he added, I should mention that the complainants have also contacted Child Protective Services. You can expect a visit from them as well. My blood ran cold. CPS. My family had escalated to reporting me to Child Protective Services. Sure enough, later that afternoon, a woman named Janice Wilson arrived introducing herself as a CPS social worker. The investigation process began again more thoroughly this time. She interviewed me privately, then Amanda, then the children. She took photographs of the home environment and detailed notes about sleeping arrangements and food preparation. I want to be clear, she said, as we concluded, that based on what I've observed, there's no evidence of neglect or endangerment. The children appear healthy, happy, and well cared for. This seems to be a family disagreement rather than a child welfare issue. I felt a wave of relief quickly followed by anger at my family for putting me through this ordeal. What happens now? I asked. I'll complete my report, which will show no findings of neglect, she explained. Your family has been informed that the children are safe and they've been provided with this address. I understand they're making arrangements to return early from their vacation to collect the children. That evening, my phone rang with a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, it was my grandmother Dorothy, who rarely used the phone due to her hearing difficulties. Glenda, dear, she said, her voice wavering slightly. I've just heard from your mother. She's quite upset. I braced myself for another guilt trip, but what came next surprised me. And I want you to know that I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, she continued. They've taken advantage of your good nature for far too long. It's about time someone held a mirror up to their behavior. Tears sprang to my eyes at this unexpected support. Thank you, Grandma. That means more than you know. Your grandfather and I raised them better than this, she sighed. Using their children as pawns, reporting their own daughter to authorities. I'm ashamed of them. We talked for nearly an hour, Dorothy sharing stories of how she had noticed the family dynamics over the years, but hadn't known how to intervene. You were always the responsible one, even as a little girl. They came to expect it from you. But that doesn't make it right. 2 days later, my family returned, having cut their vacation short. The resort had refused refunds, making their early departure even more expensive. They arrived at Amanda's house as a unified front expressions ranging from angry to hurt to embarrassed. The children, who had spent a wonderful few days playing with Amanda's teenagers, swimming in their pool, and enjoying consistent attention and care, were confused by the tension but happy to see their parents. I had prepared for this confrontation, rehearsing what I would say, but nothing could have fully prepared me for the emotional intensity of that moment. How could you do this to us? Audrey demanded, the first to speak after the awkward greetings. Do you have any idea what we went through getting that call from the police? Abandoning children is a serious offense, my father added gravely. You're lucky they didn't press charges. I did not abandon anyone, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. I ensured the children were safe and well cared for when I was cornered into a childcare situation I never agreed to and couldn't possibly manage. You could have just said no if you didn't want to watch them, Nate muttered. I tried, I exclaimed. I called, I texted, I told you all repeatedly that I couldn't do it. You ignored me and dropped them off anyway. My mother stepped forward, her expression a practiced mixture of hurt and disappointment. I never thought my own daughter would betray family this way, after everything we've done for you. Something inside me snapped at those words. All the years of being taken for granted, of giving without receiving, of being manipulated and used, crashed over me in a wave of clarity and courage. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. When have any of you put my needs first? When have you respected my time, my resources, my life? You excluded me from a family vacation. using my own planning and ideas, then expected me to provide thousands of dollars worth of childcare for free without even asking if I was willing or able. I turned to address each family member directly. Audrey, you expect me to drop everything whenever you need a babysitter? But when was the last time you offered to help me with anything? Nate, you've borrowed over $7,000 from me that you've never repaid, but you lecture me about responsibility. Mom and Dad, you've consistently prioritized my siblings' needs over mine, my entire life. But I'm the one who helped pay your mortgage for 5 years. The silence that followed was deafening. My family stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Perhaps they were. I love you all, and I especially love these children, I continued more gently. But this pattern has to stop. I deserve the same respect and consideration that you expect from me. I'm not just the reliable backup plan. I'm a person with my own life needs and boundaries. There were tears, arguments, and defensive justifications. My family didn't transform in an instant. Years of established dynamics couldn't dissolve in one confrontation. But something had fundamentally shifted. I had finally spoken my truth, and they had been forced to hear it. As they gathered the children and their belongings to leave, my mother paused at the door. We should talk, Glenda. When things calm down, maybe there are some things we need to address. It wasn't an apology, not yet, but it was an acknowledgement. And for now, that was enough. The weeks following that confrontation were some of the most difficult of my life. My family retreated into a hurt silence, communicating only through terse text messages when absolutely necessary. I oscillated between feeling empowered by finally standing up for myself and being consumed with guilt for disrupting the family structure, flawed as it was. Dr. Sharma was my anchor during this time. What you're experiencing is completely normal, she assured me. When we change established patterns in relationships, there's always resistance. That doesn't mean the change wasn't necessary. The CPS investigation concluded officially with a finding of no neglect or endangerment. Janice Wilson, the social worker, even called to let me know personally. Just so you're aware, your sister wanted to pursue this further, but there was simply no basis for any action, she explained. In my professional opinion, this was never a child welfare issue. It was a family taking advantage of a reliable member and reacting badly when that member set a boundary. Her validation meant more than she could know. In my darkest moments of doubt, I remembered her words and reminded myself that I had acted responsibly, ensuring the children were safe while also protecting myself. Taylor and Amanda became my surrogate family during the estrangement. They checked in daily, invited me for meals, and reminded me that healthy relationships involve mutual respect and reciprocity. Your family is in time out, Taylor said over wine one evening. They need to think about what they did and why it wasn't okay. At work, my boss continued to be surprisingly supportive. When I tried to apologize for the disruption to our schedule, she waved it away. Glenda, you've picked up the slack for everyone in this office at some point. You've worked weekends, taken on extra projects, and never complained. It's about time someone had your back for a change. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I received an unexpected email from Nate. Unlike the others, his message wasn't accusatory or defensive. Instead, it was thoughtful and reflective. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, he wrote, about the money, but also about how we've all treated you over the years. I didn't see it before, but I'm starting to now. I can't speak for everyone else, but I want you to know, I'm sorry. Really sorry. If you're willing, maybe we could get coffee sometime and talk? I approached that coffee meeting with caution, half expecting it to be an elaborate guilt trip. Instead, I found my brother genuinely remorseful and ready to listen. I never really thought about how one-sided things were, he admitted, stirring his coffee absently. You were always there, always helping, so I guess I just took it for granted that was your role. We talked for hours, really talked perhaps for the first time as adults. Nate acknowledged the financial debt and proposed a realistic repayment plan. More importantly, he acknowledged the emotional debt the years of taking without giving back. "I want to do better," he said simply. "For you, but also to be a better example for my kids. I don't want them growing up thinking it's okay to treat people the way we treated you." That conversation became the first small step toward rebuilding our family relationships, but on new, healthier terms. My parents were slower to come around, especially my mother, who had the most invested in maintaining the old dynamic. But even she eventually reached out. "Your father and I have been doing some reflecting," she said stiffly during an awkward phone call. "We may have taken your availability for granted at times. It wasn't the full acknowledgement I hoped for, but it was a start." We agreed to meet for lunch the following week, just the three of us, to begin a longer conversation about family expectations and boundaries. Audrey was the last holdout, maintaining that I had overreacted dramatically and embarrassed the family. But even she eventually softened when she needed help with a work project and found herself having to actually ask, rather than assume, my assistance. "It feels weird having to schedule time with you," she admitted when we met at a cafe to discuss her marketing questions. "I guess I'm used to you just being available." "That's kind of the point," I replied gently. "My time has value too. All I'm asking for is the same respect you'd give anyone else." As the weeks turned to months, new patterns slowly emerged. My family began to treat my time and resources with more consideration. Requests replaced assumptions. Thank yous became more genuine. Small reciprocations began to appear. Offers to help with errands, invitations that considered my preferences, even occasional acknowledgments of my professional achievements. For my part, I worked on saying no without guilt and yes without resentment. I practiced expressing my needs clearly rather than silently seething when they weren't met. I discovered that, contrary to my greatest fear, setting boundaries didn't destroy relationships. It created the possibility of healthier ones. 6 months after the dramatic confrontation, I used some of my saved vacation days and carefully budgeted funds to book myself a solo trip to a beach resort in Florida, ironically similar to my original family vacation suggestion. It was a symbolic reclaiming of my time and priorities, a celebration of my growing self-advocacy. The night before my departure, my family surprised me with a small gathering at my apartment. They brought food instead of expecting me to cook, thoughtful travel gifts, and genuine well wishes for my trip. "You deserve this," my father said, handing me a new beach bag. "We're proud of you, Glenda." My mother added somewhat awkwardly but sincerely, "We've learned a lot these past months about being better family to each other, about not taking people for granted." Nate had made significant payments toward his debt and now handed me a gift card for the resort spa. "For all those massages you should have been getting all these years dealing with us," he joked, but the acknowledgement behind it was real. Even Audrey managed a genuine moment, pulling me aside to say quietly, "I was wrong about how I reacted, and about a lot of things before that. I'm trying to do better." As I boarded my flight the next morning, I reflected on the journey of the past year. Standing up for myself had been terrifying. The aftermath had been painful. But on the other side of that pain was a new kind of relationship with my family. Not perfect, still evolving, but fundamentally more balanced and respectful. I had feared that setting boundaries would mean losing my family. Instead, it had created the possibility of having real reciprocal relationships with them for the first time. And perhaps most importantly, it had allowed me to reclaim my own worth, to recognize that my needs mattered just as much as anyone else's. That early morning escape had been the bravest thing I'd ever done. It had also been the beginning of finally finding myself after a lifetime of being who everyone else needed me to be. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family who took you for granted? What gave you the courage to finally stand up for yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to put themselves first sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most important growth.